This video I'm responding to is way older than I thought it was on account of the fact that I apparently can't read, but I'd still like to make this response video because I think some ideas are better explained as responses to other arguments, and because the original video is too stupid to pass up.
So, firstly, why do people think that this is a thing? The main arguments I see about this come from men.
Mansplain!
Men who take issue with certain social norms or stats or even legal structures which seem to give women advantages over men.
Okay, so the TLDR version of this video is basically to say that gender roles and gender stereotypes have advantages and disadvantages in different areas of people's lives. They are essentially trade-offs. However, Ceedling seems intent on only focusing on those areas where these social norms don't help women and the other areas where they do help men, not looking at the trade-offs. Specifically, it seems that when a social norm advantages women in one area, yeah, she'll acknowledge it, kind of, but then she'll go on to find any and all other situations where that same social norm is not an advantage. But when a social norm advantages men, well, that's all that matters. Looking at other areas where that might not advantage men would just be a waste of her time. Her argument basically boils down to, well, women's privileges aren't as good as men think they are. Which is probably true, but she doesn't seem to realize that you could say the exact same thing about men and men's privileges. You're a man, you're strong, so you don't need our help. Well, actually, I do right now. I'm in a very tough spot. Yeah, see, you're doing great. Now get back to work. The one concrete distinction she makes between male and female privilege is the idea that female privilege is uniquely lackluster because it is all contained within a domestic or private sphere, whereas men's privileges, she says, extend far and wide.
What I am saying, though, is that these privileges all exist in a domestic or private sphere. So while men are more easily accepted as the head of a company or of a family or a country, women are indeed more easily accepted as nurturing, submissive, and inferior.
Yeah, sure, except for pretty much any job that is dominated by women, such as teaching or nursing, or really any career field that interacts directly with people. Does that not count as a public or professional sphere? And the fact that women are less likely to be seen as predatory at a children's playground, or the fact that they are more likely to receive help from strangers, are those domestic and private spheres?
Yes, we are not as easily deemed predators when we attend a children's playground. This seems to come up a lot for men's rights activists.
Okay, bear with me here, but I'm pretty sure the reason this comes up a lot in your discussions with men's rights activists is because you're trying to force a distinction between public and private spheres, when in fact there is a lot of overlap between the genders, as evidenced by this public advantage that women have. But let's go back and see what exactly led her to this conclusion that women's privileges are uniquely lackluster.
So think, for example, of the very often cited stat about women being more likely to receive custody of children in a divorce case.
Well, that's related to a domestic or private sphere, that of raising children, but getting custody is unequivocally a public legal advantage that women have, which is a very big one, especially if you're a father who wants to see his children but can't. A similar story arises with regard to sentencing times for prison between men and women. Is that a domestic or private sphere?
These kinds of perceived inequalities are often told to me as proof that women have privilege in their being women. That being born a woman means that we will have it easier than men in a lot of ways. You know, because people hold doors for us and pay for our dinner. Privilege, right?
I mean, yeah, but I think the other stuff we mentioned is a lot more important and a lot more relevant. But we'll get into this when we address her second point.
Privilege, right? Wrong. And here's why female privilege is not as straightforward as many men would like you to think.
Now, this I agree with. It seems to me that in the 21st century, neither gender's privileges are as straightforward as they may seem. For the most part, we live in a world of gendered advantages and disadvantages in different areas of life. However, this is not what she's arguing. Women's privileges are not as straightforward as they may seem, but men's privileges can be taken at face value. That is what she is arguing, and that is where we disagree. And I can't help but love the part where she says this, because it is so self-serving and it feeds so nicely into my next criticism.
Yes, maybe we do have to pay for dinner dates less often due to social norms. Norms we did not create, I might add. Also due to social norms surrounding motherhood and domestic labor, which we did not create and which do not serve women well in a larger sense.
Don't blame me. I didn't do it.
Social norms that women did not create. So basically you're telling me that for the entirety of recorded history, women were just sitting on their hands, not contributing anything, not influencing men in any way, and basically just not participating in the culture at all.
The second point is chivalry can die. Really, men, if you're going to resent women because you pay for our dinner or open our doors, then just stop doing it. We're not forcing you to buy us drinks.
Wow, Susan, look at all these poor men who think they have to be rich and tall and chivalrous in order to be attractive to women. Isn't it sad how they've created such toxic masculinity for themselves? Well, yeah, I mean, I would never marry a poorer, shorter, unchivalrous man, but you see, most other women, they would, well, men just made us think this way. Why would they do that and how? Patriarchy, culture. Okay, Seedling, the reason why men don't just stop doing this is because if we do, then we're gonna lose out to other men who are willing to do this and who are willing to give this special treatment to their dates. This is effectively just a classic prisoner's dilemma, and it's really no one's fault. A prisoner's dilemma is basically a situation where multiple people or multiple groups of people would benefit more if they could all just agree to cooperate. But for whatever reason, either they can't communicate or they simply don't trust each other. The dilemma is the fact that it's more beneficial to each individual to defect, to not cooperate, even though if only we could just work together, we would all get more. One of my favorite examples of a prisoner's dilemma actually comes from Richard Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene, where he asks the question, why do trees have to be so damn tall? It's really a waste of energy and nutrients to grow that high, but they have to in a competitive environment to fight other trees who might grow taller than them and take all the sunlight. If only, he says, if only trees could just all agree to grow 2 feet tall, then all trees would be fine and all trees would benefit. But as soon as one mutant tree arises that, let's say, grows 3 feet tall, suddenly it's stealing the sunlight from the other trees, and in order to survive, they have to now compete. And so, you can see it's really no one's fault, that's just what happens in a competitive environment. In the same way, if all men could just agree to stop giving women special treatment, then all men would benefit, at the expense of women no less, so, it's a win-win for patriarchy. But we can't. And we don't. It's as if men are not some homogeneous mass that's unconsciously working for its own interests and against the interest of women. And you just might get feminists like Seedling to understand this argument if you simply use it against them in a different context. Really, women, if you're going to resent men for having to shave your legs and put on makeup, then just stop doing it. Oh right, you can't, because if you do, you'll lose out to other women. Funny how that works. And from the clip I played that kicked off this whole segment, she seems to be implying that every gender role and every social norm was originally created deliberately, rather than simply being the product of the environment or the different ways that men and women tend to behave.
We built this city on gender roles.
Your privileges as a man are widespread and they're mostly invisible to you. What you might call my privilege, like getting a free meal, often comes with harmful strings attached, like the expectation that I'll sleep with you.
Your privilege blinds you to how great it is. Female privilege isn't that great. I'm sorry, how does someone say these two things back to back with a straight face?
3, one interesting notion of female privilege is regarding how we're taught to express emotions. Women, it's true, are not chastised in the same way that men are when we show signs of weakness or emotions. But this is a result of patriarchal norms regarding what makes someone a real man. These are not norms that women created.
Which we did not create! Even though most women probably wouldn't date a man who cried and got emotional as much as they do. There's a somewhat internet-famous list written by a husband called Reasons Why My Wife is Crying. Ladies, do you really think you'd be attracted to a man who behaved like this? Now, honestly, as a man who dates women, I find this kinda cute. Sure, if she was my wife, I'd probably roll my eyes, but inside I'd be thinking, it's kind of adorable.
So this is a harmful notion that both reinforces women as a lesser gender and asks men to carry an unfair burden in order to maintain their manhood. No one wins in this scenario.
Remember, children, always shift the goalposts when someone claims that women have any advantages.
And finally, female privilege is having no pressure to be the sole or primary breadwinner in the family. I'm told this one a lot too. The perception that women can just rely on their husband for monetary support is harmful to both men and women.
Do you think that maybe it comes from the fact that most women like it when their man can provide for them, even when they don't even need it? It turns out that across cultures and across socioeconomic tiers, this is the case. But I'm sure that it's men's fault somehow and women had no part in this.
So, female privilege is ultimately a surface privilege. It might give women some small benefits like free food or the ability to cry in public without it threatening our womanhood, but it doesn't hold any real structural or substantial power.
Now, to an extent, I do understand the direction this argument is going. If you believe that being a woman is, on the net, significantly a disadvantage as compared to being a man, then someone saying that it still benefits you in one area is almost like if I went up to a kid who just had both his feet amputated, and I say, well, at least you can't stub your toes anymore. What a privilege! Of course, feminists like Ceedling have not even come close to demonstrating that being a woman instead of a man is analogous to, say, having both your feet cut off, or any type of condition where a privilege of that condition clearly rings hollow.
We are placed on a pedestal due to stereotypes surrounding us as the fairer, gentler sex. And though we might seem privileged above men in some respects, this pedestal does not lend itself to the many varied lives that women want and deserve to live.
And in all your supposed interactions with MRAs and people who disagree with you, you've never once heard someone say the exact same thing about men. I honestly find that hard to believe, and I think you've just chosen to ignore an inconvenient counter-argument, which is, at its core, your own argument.
Society does not accommodate women when we step off of our feminine pedestal, and that is not privilege, it's sexism.
Do you really think society is any more accommodating of men who step off their pedestals and do non-manly things, like cry because we learned that swans can be gay?
I hope this was helpful, and I'll see y'all next time.
Oh, dear God, no!